In this episode, we're meeting with inventor Tom, winner of The Apprentice. Inventor Tom, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Can we start with a hand raise, the big victorious hand raise from you?
What, the whole sort of like that? Yeah, when I came out of that boardroom straight after the meeting, we'd just discovered that I was Lord Sugar's next business partner. You walked out, it was just such an amazing feeling. I
was in my lounge room, I was like, my family, we all absolutely wanted Inventor Tom to win.
Well, thank you so much. I've had huge support. And what's brilliant about the show, I've had so many people said, yeah, no, I phoned in, I voted for you. I was like, you might be a bit confused about which programme. However, thank you so much.
So how would you describe this past year?
How would I describe this? It's been a whirlwind. It's been incredible. But really, for me, actually, it's like, I've now got this opportunity. I was involved in this programme. I went on it because I know I don't know everything. Lord Sugar knows so much, has huge experience, especially in my kind of product development area. And I'm learning from that, and I have the possibility to really, really make something.
And the Olympic Games of the entrepreneur world.
The Olympic Games of the entrepreneur, yeah, that's how...
In your own words.
Yeah, how I viewed it from the beginning. That you could do this, you could make something, because a lot of inventors really struggle with the kind of marketing side and getting awareness out about their ideas.
And let's talk about that, actually. You're an inventor. Which actual process of the whole invention and product launching aspect do you enjoy the most?
Really, really good question. I'm a mechanical engineer. Yep. That's what I sort of trained in, and designer. I really like talking to customers, consumers, finding out what bothers them, what they don't like. I'm an inventor because I'm just a bit lazy. I get annoyed that things don't make it easy for me, you know. And so a pet hate at the moment is laundry. We all have to do it. But just that whole process of putting stuff in the machine, taking it out, hanging it up, ironing it, just drives me mad. And unfortunately, I don't have to do it too much. But it's like those kind of things, looking at how people use stuff and trying to find simple solutions.
And let's look at that from the angle of an inventor. How do you look at the world through the lens of problems and solutions, and how do you evaluate a problem and what the solution should be?
Is a really difficult question. For me, for example, with the curved nail file, I was watching my sister visited. She was filing her nails and she kind of switched hands, and I could see that it was much more difficult for her to make that curved shape with her left hand than it was with her right hand. I was like, that's silly, you know, well, maybe we could do something about it. So I took it out of her hands and went, you know, can I have a go at that? And because I'd never done it before, maybe that was an advantage. I was like, well, maybe if we curved it. And so that's sort of how that develops. And then we go through the process. Then you start doing focus groups. Is it just me who thinks that's a good idea? But also you've got to be very conscious about not spending too much time, not money. And customers often don't necessarily know what's better. They go, well, it's a bit different. But it's a very difficult process.
But I do love that, and I think there's just extraordinary genius in that, such as your baby invention.
Yeah, the baby bottle.
Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, certainly. So this again came from a consumer problem with colic. Babies, when they drink, they can ingest quite a lot of air. That creates huge discomfort, which ends up in screaming. And colic is scientifically term for if your baby screams for more than 4 hours in a row. 4 hours of screaming, I can't think of anything worse. So we kind of developed this. You talked about problems and solutions. So at the time I was working with a silicon company, and we realised that silicon, which is really safe, can also be flexible. So we could make a flexible bottle, no air therefore gets ingested by the baby, and you suddenly have this, hang on, this could be really clever. The detail of making it work was an absolute nightmare.
And can you talk us about, I love the genius also of another invention, the baby wipes. Well, the idea and how that came. The wiping of the baby.
Oh yeah, it was. I was visiting my wife's sister, and little 3-year-old Isabel, and I could tell that she was just having the worst day, this little baby, because she couldn't breathe. and you're like, well, all she was doing is sort of this. And you're like, well, hang on, maybe if you put a tissue there, then do it yourself. It's just a really, really simple thing. But what's great is I was able to blog that and tweet about it. Inventor_Tom, I tweeted up, and within half an hour, I think I had a couple of hundred responses.
Well, I thought the idea was completely genius because obviously a lot of babies, they just slobber everywhere, and I thought, my goodness, how come nobody's ever? Inventor Tom came up with that. So where did you get your inspiration from? Because inspiration is not easy to come by, and actual execution of that. And
I don't know. I just see things. Maybe in terms of where my inspiration comes from, it's from watching people. Then it's a case of evaluating that and looking into things. Like, one of the things that I'm not good at, or one of the things, my biggest downfall is I get really excited about new ideas. What's been fantastic about working with Lord Sugar is he'd said, no, come on, let's focus in on something. And that's why potentially this is becoming such a success at the moment, because I've been forced to focus.
Okay, and let's talk about that focus also. How do you know when to take an idea to the next level versus when to abort an idea? Is there that market research involved? I know you do a lot of social media outreach.
Yeah.
How do you really know what's really going to launch out in the market? And when do you release those secrets so they are proprietary to yourself rather than being out there?
Yeah. It's a very difficult problem, right? You have to start at the end. You have to start with the consumer. First question is, how much is a consumer going to pay for this? Right? Then you know that how are you going to reach that consumer? You've got to go through probably fairly standard retail channels. So you've got to understand what their margin is going to be. And you can work that back to go, well, therefore, if this is commercially viable, I have to be able to make this for this much money. Now, that process kills off 90% of ideas. Because you kind of go, well, I just can't make it for that much. That's the first question. The second one is, what is my area of expertise? Where do I know people? Do I know anything about this area? And you have to sort of align those two things together to make sure that you've got something at the right price, in an area you know something about, through channels that you understand, to actually get it to the end user.
Can you walk us through that process actually of inspiration, invention, and getting it out to market? Because a lot of people out there do have these ideas.
Yeah.
Some will abort them, some will proceed with them, but they'll never know how to get it into a supermarket like Sainsbury's or Tesco's. And
it's a fascinating problem, actually. I get sent a huge number of inventors in the country send me their ideas, going, how could I move this forward? And it's actually something I'm potentially really interested in trying to help out in the future. And there are a couple of ideas that maybe I might help the inventors do it, because the idea is quite an easy bit, unfortunately. Finding the manufacturers.
For you, it's an easy bit. For most of us, that's the difficult part.
Well, maybe. There is a need, and there are some very good companies, especially in the States, actually looking at this, going, there are inventors, there are retailers. How do we map the two together? They're getting some of that really, really right. Sorry, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I'll put a link out or something. But that's actually something that I'm hoping that one day I might get involved in, because it's simple if you know what you're doing. I'm fortunate, I've got a fantastic freight forwarding company, a brilliant warehouse company. I know how to get into the retailers and I can have discussions with them. I've got some great manufacturers that I work with a lot. So putting the dots together is much simpler for me now than it has been previously. And it's almost impossible for some inventors to do. But maybe there's something I can build upon to help others in the future.
Let's talk about your past, actually. Let's talk about your childhood. Dyslexia.
Yeah.
Disability or advantage, gift? What would you say?
Dyslexia, disadvantage or gift? I think it's both. I really, really struggled with reading, with writing, with spelling. Apparently I had a reading age of about 6 when I was 16 or something like that. Fortunately, I was of that era who had computers from quite early on. Later on the internet and extra time. Now, I don't have nearly as much problem with the reading and writing, but the benefits of my dyslexia are really kind of key. The sort of visualization, the random thinking. And I've met a number of dyslexics who are really pushing that we shouldn't be talking about this as a disability at all. Should be really focused on how we need to encourage this, so that, because the list of dyslexics is actually enormous. apparently. You know, you've got Branson, you've got potentially Jobs, you've got Lord Sugar. I don't know, but entrepreneurs of our time, and also you've got Asperger's. Huge number of Asperger's sufferers. Huge number of, again, I've said sufferers. I think that's wrong. But the IT world is very dominated by Asperger's syndrome individuals.
So Tom, in terms of your family and your parents and how they've really fostered your love of invention. I know you used to work with your father in the backyard and stuff. Can you talk us about that?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I come from a family of pretty much everyone works for themselves. So I was sort of encouraged to do that. I was also able to go and work for my dad from, I think, the age of 6. I was stuffing envelopes for him at his business. And that really helps because you kind of have a sense of belief. They've just always been very supportive. If I knew then what I know now, I don't think I ever would have started, because it's so much more difficult than it looks. And if it hadn't been them going, you can do this, and actually, especially my mum, incredibly kind of, come on, keep going, you can do this.
So Tom, you graduated from the University of Bath with a degree in mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
To become an inventor and an entrepreneur, do you think higher education is essential?
Essential is a big word. I think everyone goes through different loops, and some of the most successful entrepreneurs that we know didn't make it to the end, but they did start, virtually all of them. So I think university is an amazing place. You go there and you meet lots of people, and that's possibly one of the biggest aspects of it. For me, I also learned a number of very important skills, like understanding patents, how to get things made, how to design things to make it easy to make them, which I've really, really needed for my business world. But there are many different routes to becoming an entrepreneur, I suppose.
Who do you think is the greatest British inventor?
Wow. It's a very good, very difficult question. Of our present time, I think Dyson has done incredibly well, and I think Lord Sugar did pretty well. He's certainly created a huge number of things. His first computer was actually the one that we first had in my family. I
had one of his computers when I was a kid, and I lived halfway all across the world in Sydney. Yeah. My computer was an Amstrad CPC 464. There you go. I used to play more games on that. Yeah. Kung Fu. There you go.
What's great is in the office we have this archive where all these old computers are, and you go in and you go, God, this was the top thing at the time, and then you kind of take out your smartphone and go, slightly different ball game.
Actually, let's talk about that. How do you build a timeless invention?
You build a timeless invention. You build a time machine, I suppose.
Something that stands through the test of time, because a nail file has stood a long test of time. How do you?
And in different worlds, it's easier to create timeless things. I think in the beauty world, you sort of can do it. Like, you even look at Chanel No. 5. I don't think they've changed that in 50 years, potentially a lot longer. In a consumer electronics, it's almost impossible to design something that lasts more than a couple of days. So it can change. I think design, which in the UK we think of design as being how something looks, right? I think in the US there's a slightly bigger view of design, that it's sort of like how it works with people, how it fills into the whole system. But design is often the key bit that helps give longevity to an idea.
As an entrepreneur, you develop a range of ideas in your mind, and you want to execute a lot of them. What would you say is a safe idea, and how do you protect that?
A safe idea. In terms of how you protect that, patents, design rights, trademarks. Trademarks actually are one of the strongest forms of protection, because they give you 70 years as opposed to a patent which is only 18. So getting that kind of trademark of the name, like for myself, style file, fitting in with the design of the actual product is hugely important. And you think of a lot of the sort of like confectionery, like the Aero and the Whisper and dairy milk and things. Those are things that I think is something that will almost last forever.
What sort of patents would be involved in trying to get that as your own exclusive product and nobody can steal that particular idea?
So for this is a physical product, so I can get a with an innovation, so I can get a patent. So I've made a patent application through the UK, and then I took that to the States and to other countries as a patent. I can also get a design registration because it has a certain look, and that protects that. And then you notice, you've got the style file logo here. You can get a trademark protection on that. So it is about a portfolio of protection. You can also get protection related to how you make something or the components of things. And that bringing together of things is really, really important.
Which designers do you yourself admire?
Which designers do I admire? Well, I admire a lot of the ones that we all really, really admire. The likes of Miss Irvine from Apple, another Brit, Dyson. I admire a huge number of the online designers, as it were, like the user interfaces that you have on many of these things these days are hugely admirable, but there's no kind of name on them, which is very interesting. I like looking at lots of different things and try. A huge amount of innovation, right, has already been done. It's a case of taking something from another field and sort of putting it into your specific application to make it life easier for a user in your field. And that's where fantastic design often comes from.
So Tom, when you invent a particular product and you want to launch it to market, do you get involved in writing a business plan, and do you go through those normal stages that are normally recommended for entrepreneurs?
Yes, certainly. You've got to look at the business case for it, and that mainly comes back to that: what will someone pay? What can you get it made for? How do you get it from there to there? And if you're going through retailers or third parties, what margin are they going to want? And that's the most important bit. Second one is how many of them are they going to buy? Because if you're only going to sell 10, your margin has got to be amazing. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. And actually, what's been fantastic about working with Lord Sugar is that's the kind of simplicity is an interesting word, and the fact that simplicity is often where great things come from. So although that seems like a really simple model, it's very, very powerful, and that's the starting point.
Actually, let's talk about that phenomenal win on The Apprentice. And what was your greatest lesson from there, by way of a study of character, actually? And what did you learn about teamwork and working collaboratively with people, as well as managing upward and sideward relationships?
I learned a huge amount from the process of The Apprentice. It's this pressure cooker where you get massive feedback. Every few days I'd find out exactly how we'd done on a task. My first thing was actually to follow my instincts, and I didn't a number of times, to the detriment of the team in many respects. So that was number one thing for me. The second one is to really fight your corner when you do believe in something. And the third thing is that creativity is absolutely vital. You've got to have a point of difference.
What would you say was the hardest time in your life, as well as the hardest time during your apprentice season?
In terms of the hardest time in my life, was actually just before I went on to The Apprentice, in the fact that I'd been involved in another business. An investor had come in, he was trying to kick me out because I was the smallest holder. I just split up with a long-term girlfriend. I was starting to seriously question certain decisions I'd made, and I was actually supposed to be making applications for what my grandfather would describe as a proper job. Instead, I did the application for The Apprentice, and here I am. So that was a pretty dark time, actually. On the process, the beauty task, ironically, I found horrific, because I knew we'd made a bad decision from about 10 minutes in. We'd chosen the wrong location, so I knew we were stuffed. But you have to keep on fighting even though you're stuffed. And then some of those boardrooms became really heated. I don't find it personally productive arguing directly with people, because you've got that.
That was very clearly visible that you weren't comfortable arguing with people.
I don't like to lose ground on stuff, but what's the point in having an argument where all you know is that no one's going to win?
My Inventor Tom moment was the hard hat. That was my Inventor Tom moment. On the girl and the surfboard, the hard hat. That was my moment. What was your Inventor Tom moment?
I think the My Pie. that name. I've had huge comeback from people about that, because it just worked, and it was funny. It was such a difficult thing to find a name for, but because we were under huge pressure to come up with it, I actually misread a sign on the wall. My dyslexic mind completely got it wrong, and I said my pie, whereas it was completely different, and it stuck and it worked really well.
What would you say is the greatest challenge for an inventor?
The greatest challenge for an inventor is a list about this long.
If generating ideas is the simple part of the process, what's the difficult part of the process?
For an inventor who come up with an idea in an area they don't understand, it's almost actually pretty close to impossible. To bring an invention to market, there's so many challenges, and the list of kind of the biggest problem is actually enormous. In my feeling, one of the most important things is just to last the distance. Keep pushing, keep trying, and potentially find another way of funding your lifestyle whilst in parallel making this happen. Because for many people it takes between 2 and 5 years. So you've got to live in those 2 and 5 years before you've even got it on the market and it's starting to make money. So that's a very key consideration.
You're now a huge role model for young inventors or for young kids who want to move into the world of innovation and entrepreneurship and invention. What would you like to do to give back to them, or how would you like to really inspire and harness the power of invention and innovation in the UK, all around the world?
As you say, I've become a kind of...
You've become a role model.
It's fantastic, right? The first thing is I was called sort of a bit of a geek on the programme. I think that's brilliant. I think the fact that the geek nice guy won is just a fantastic story for us all.
The nice guy who finished first.
It does happen, right? So firstly, in business you can be a good guy if you're creative and you're clever about how you do things, right? So that's the first thing. Secondly, actually, I think that it's now my chance to become a proper inspiration. If I can make my business into a success, something we can hold up, now that's a real inspiration to others. And I hope that can become a big enough success that I can really start giving back. And we talked earlier about this difficulty for inventors to go from idea to market. And I'm hoping that one day I'll be able to make that much, much better.